everyone. Lou and I talked about a whole lot of interesting subjects this month when we were recording, and what I think I'll do is that I'll make some little short bits that I'll put in the show, but our longer discussion of any given topic I'll put up on YouTube as a longer piece. So if you hear something in the show and you think, oh, I wouldn't mind knowing a little bit more about that, you'll find it in a week or two after the show comes out as a longer recording on our YouTube channel.
Highland FM 107.1.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the November episode of Going Wild in the Highlands. I'm very pleased to be able to tell you that Lou is back. You probably remember that last month I was on my own. Put the microphone near yourself, darling.
So sorry. I survived my holiday. More than survived.
And I have allocated 30 seconds for you to tell us about your holiday. Fire away. Where have you been? What have you done? What did you see?
I've been to the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. They are an extraordinary range of mountains, quite extensive area. It goes all the way from where you go to Port Jackson.
30 seconds.
No.
Keep going.
I can't do this.
What was the highlight? All right, you can have two highlights. Go on.
Well, the highlight I told you about with the splendid wren.
Oh, yes, you told me, but tell everybody else.
The splendid wren. Well, there I am. I'm in amongst all these 550 million rocks. There are these great sand dunes, which are covered in mallee bushes, you know, those sort of things that look like upside down umbrellas all over the place. That's how they look. You know, all the branches come down to one tiny rootstock.
All right.
And in between them all fly all these birds. They're all singing. They're all small. They're loud. And they're fast. And it's a whole different lot of birds that I have not familiar with. I saw 3 new species while I was there.
Oh, wow.
But one of them in particular was excellent. I was in this remote area, no people, and there was this piece of blue plastic in this yellow wattle tree that was in flower. Very striking. And I thought to myself, what on earth is going on? Is that plastic in this wonderful remote place? I was so sickened. And I got my binoculars onto it, and it wasn't a piece of blue plastic. It was a splendid fairy wren. I have never seen blue like it. It was sensational.
Except in plastic.
No plastic. No plastic. And I just couldn't believe the colours. I mean, we're used to the superb. And
which is fabulously coloured.
Which is fabulous, but imagine that colour all over the bird with very vibrant mauves in there and various tones of azure.
Oh,
gorgeous. It was to die for. So that was one of my highlights. But the other highlight was that we went to a place where there was an exhibition of all the animals that once lived on the planet 650 million years ago. And they have all been wiped out. There was a wipeout in the Cambrian era, and then they talk about the Cambrian explosion. And then the Cambrian explosion was when suddenly we got bones and we could move and we could have mouths and anuses and things like that. This was before
very
anybody...
handy, I might say.
You do need those, you think, but these animals had neither.
Right.
And they would take their food by scraping it along their skin, and it would be taken in through their skin. Tiny little things in warm water. And they were able to reproduce this amazing mirage on rocks, showing you exactly where the fossils were of these soft-bodied animals. Some of them quite big. And it blew my mind. It was the best audiovisual I have ever seen in my life.
Wow. And
It's called the Ediacarian fossils, but I may be pronouncing it wrong.
Right. So you've got 30 more, no, not even 30, a short time to just tell us precisely where that spot was. Where were you when you saw that?
The Ediacarian fossils are in the Flinders Ranges. So we're talking north of Port Augusta.
Right. So I'm meaning where was the actual museum-y display place?
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Right. Okay, all right, everybody. There's Lou's recommendation.
It was wonderful. It was all wonderful.
Well, in the meantime, while you were away, I interviewed 3 different people, someone from Southern Highlands Australian Plant Society, someone from BirdLife Southern Highlands, and someone from Southern Highlands Land
Yes,
Care
well,
Network.
I listened to them all. They were absolutely wonderful, actually.
Well, thank you. I can manage without you if I have to.
Yeah, it can't be easy, though.
So those interviews are available in short in our October show, if you missed that, or the longer versions of each interview are available on the YouTube channel. 2 of them are up at the moment, and the 3rd one, BirdLife Southern Highlands, will be up shortly. But we wanted to talk about some seasonal things that are happening at the moment. Oh, no, I wanted to tell you one thing that I saw, Lou, while you were away. I was out with some friends of the podcast. We were looking for glossy black cockatoos, and we could hear some birds making a big fuss. And as you know, often when they do that, it's because there's an owl or something similar around.
A predator, usually.
Yeah, that they're not very happy about. So we followed the calls to where they were, and there were a couple of brown-headed honey-eaters having a go at a koala right up in the canopy.
Oh, you didn't mention the koala. It's not every day you see a koala.
Not every day. I think it's probably, for this area, it's a more exciting sighting than a glossy black cockatoo. And we were thinking, why are they bothering the koala? Because it's not a threat. It's not a predator. What's the big deal? And as we watched, we realised that they were picking fur from the poor old koala's bum and flying away with it, presumably to line their nest.
How humiliating for the poor koala. So the birds that were making the noise, they were brown-headed honey-eaters.
Yes.
Not a honey-eater you see that often.
No, to see a brown-headed honey-eater is a bit of a thrill in itself for a birder.
Quite unusual in these
Yeah.
parts. And also, it's not a particularly conspicuous honey-eaters. It's mostly brown.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
So we were really pleased with that. We didn't see any glossies on the day, but we were pretty happy to come away with that sighting. So that's a seasonal observation related to spring. And another one that we're making at the moment, I noticed the other day when I came to visit you in Bundanoon, and I was listening to the radio as I was driving towards your place, and almost immediately that I hit the Bundanoon sign, suddenly the radio sounded a whole lot different. I thought, what's happened to it? Something's happened to the signal. And then I realised that the sound that I was hearing was actually outside the car. I wound the window down and I was assaulted by the sound of thousands of cicadas calling.
Yes, Bundanoon, that's where it's all buzzing.
Cicada Central.
It's Cicada Central. You drive around all these other areas and it's quite quiet. You come into this little village and it's like static, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
Well,
like
that was
static.
why the
It's
radio, I thought
extraordinary.
the radio is something strong.
Well, something has been happening there, definitely. So these cicadas are coming out of holes. I'll tell you their life cycle. They basically spend most of their life underground as a little grub. And they eat plant roots. That's what they do in some cases for 7 years. I know. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. But that is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
That long they live underground. And then one day they finally shed, because their skins have been growing and they've been shedding them, and they finally, in their last stage, crawl up out of the ground. And if you ever look at a cicada, you'll see those front legs are really muscular. And with those front legs, they crawl out of the ground. They come out of the ground as a nymph or a larvae, if you like, and you can see what they look like because they leave their skins behind. I'm sure many people have seen the skins. They split open down the centre and out crawls the adults.
And that's the one that starts to call.
And that's the one that starts to call if he's male. He goes up as high as he can to the trees because you get a better bang for your buck sound-wise. It is the loudest sound in the whole world that an insect can make. Deafening.
It can be quite uncomfortable to be with them. Yeah.
And not only is it uncomfortable, all the different species, they make different sounds. And what I discovered was if you want to identify them, you're better to do it through their sound than looking at them.
All right.
Yeah. So the one we have, I think, in Bundanoon is called a black prince.
Mm-hmm.
I identified it from the sound. I got on Google. You can listen to the sounds. But an interesting thing about their names, they've all got these beautiful names.
They've got some fabulous names. Just before we continue talking about that, let me list some of their names because I just love them. Black Prince, Red Eye, Flowery Baker, Cherry Nose, Greengrocer, Double Drummer, Yellow Monday, Silver Princess, Double Spotted, Zipping Ambertail, Southern Red-Eyed Squeaker, Black Squeaker, Razor Grinder. And that's just a selection.
And so do you know who named them?
I read that it was children.
It was children.
But do we know that's for sure true?
Yes, we do.
Right?
What happened was in the Depression, when children had no toys to play with, they played with cicadas. And they swapped them and cherished them, and they gave them all these different names. So I'll have 2 of your cherry nose for one of my drummers, thank you.
Oh,
that sort of thing in the school yard.
Oh, that's a gorgeous story.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
So the cicadas this year, we've noticed they're not making it up to the trees. They're getting out of the ground. There's holes everywhere, and they're just getting a bit of the way up. But a lot of them are not making it.
Right.
My theory is this. It actually isn't that hot. And I think it needs to be really hot to get that thorax that has the 3 pairs of legs on it. Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, the timbal, which is like a cymbal. It's the thing underneath that basically makes the sound, a sort of ribbed kind of flat thing like a washboard. It needs to be heated up to make them really active. They need to warm up that area where you're going to use a lot of muscle, which is the thorax. And I don't think it's hot enough.
Oh, well, that's an interesting theory.
I have absolutely no scientific basis for this theory. It's just my thought.
I've had a little bit of contact with a guy who is a cicada expert. Ooh. So maybe I shall write to him again and ask him about this. I'm talking about Nathan Emery. Now, Nathan has provided me with quite a bit of information about cicadas. Nathan has a website called Cicadarama, and he's also got a Facebook page, Instagram page, and a page on X, I believe. So anything that I say, if I get it wrong, it's not Nathan's fault. It's that I've misrepresented something, but Nathan has given me lots of information. One of the things that he told me is that probably they won't come out of the ground until the ground temperature right down at 30 to 45 centimetres gets warm enough that alerts them. But they're not really sure, and they think that some cicadas also respond to the movement of the liquid in the roots underground. They can sense that.
Cosmic.
That's telling them that it's
That's
spring.
Exciting.
And they also think that rainfall or soil moisture may be of some relevance to the timing of them coming out. People are saying they're coming out earlier this year. Do you think that's true? They are.
I think they are.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. I mean, it has been very wet winter.
So the moisture theory might be
Maybe
relevant.
the moisture's up.
Right.
I don't know.
Nathan also told me that they are more likely to call if the temperature is over 20 centigrade. A couple of other interesting things that he told me is that in Australia there are more than 800 species that we know. We're still discovering new species to this day, in part thanks to citizen scientists.
Hey, go citizen scientists.
Yeah. Have you got some more interesting things to say about
Well,
cicadas?
there is one thing the males sing to attract females. That's the number one reason, right? But they think also that maybe the sound also is a detractant for birds. that if
It's
you scream
so
loud
loud.
enough, the birds will be too frightened to touch you. But I have seen the kookaburras eating them, and I have seen the noisy miners eating them. And yesterday I saw what rather shocked me, which was a crimson rosella,
Eating.
a grass-eating bird fiddling around with the abdomen of a fallen cicada.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was a bit shocked because
And-
they're not meat eaters, are they?
And a friend of the podcast, Nigel, told me that his dog finds them quite yummy.
Yes, I've heard dogs will follow them around.
We should say too that cicadas are not harmful to people.
No,
No,
not at all.
they
They don't bite.
They don't bite. They don't even bite to eat. They don't have chewing mouth parts. So they're not to be frightened of.
Absolutely not.
And
But they are a bit clingy.
They
So if you get one on your hand, just go to the nearest tree trunk and send it on its
gently
way
encourage it.
up the tree. Yeah.
And each individual is probably only going to be an adult for 1 to 4 weeks in
Yes.
Australia. Very sad. So they've spent sometimes 7 years
Mm-hmm.
down under the ground. They come out and they get to call and mate for 1 to 4 weeks. Poor
I know.
guys.
I know.
And that's the end of that. So everybody, check out Cicada Rama. Check out Nathan's various different pages. Nathan, if I've stuffed up any of the information, my apologies. Everybody, it's my fault, not Nathan's.
On that site, I just wanted to ask you, does he have the calls?
Yes.
Well, that would be so handy
Yeah,
because you can identify
actually
them by the
find them.
calls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And keep up the good work, Nathan. I've noticed while I've been out and about recently that along the river banks in many parts of the Highlands at the moment and on some people's dams, I'm seeing yellow flag iris. And I've learned a few things about this plant. I'm concerned that some people seeing it on the riverbanks might feel like, that's very pretty. And maybe you could even argue that it is very pretty, but it's in the wrong place and it's actually causing quite a lot of trouble along the rivers. So this is not a native plant. Let me first describe it. We all know irises. They usually have 3 petals and these ones are yellow. If you're along a riverbank and you see a large yellow flower, you're likely to be seeing a yellow flag iris.
I'm seeing them a lot at the moment.
Yeah. You can buy them in nurseries, but they're an introduced plant and they have escaped from gardens and they're causing trouble. They're choking out the normal reeds and sedges and other riverside plants along the banks of our rivers so that our own native plants can't grow in those areas, and so the habitat potentially is wrong for other creatures in those areas. I kind of think
You can't get
platypus-
any reed warblers if you
don't have reeds.
if you don't have reeds.
No, that's right. And they are really, really tough. Someone I was talking to equated them to agapanthus. You know how tough it is to get an agapanthus out. Getting a yellow flag out is equally challenging.
Is it to do with the root system then?
Yes, yeah. It
Yes.
has a rhizome like the agapanthus. Many people plant them in their pond or somewhere like that, and they think that they're relatively safe and enclosed in a pond. However, they have seeds and they have the big rhizome, and sometimes when we have a significant water event, a friend told me recently, it happened to him, the pond water got washed out and then goes into our waterways and carries with it the seed cases.
Right.
And sometimes part of the rhizome, which is broken off,
Right.
gets into the waterway, and the rhizomes and the seed cases can actually travel and last for 7 months. So you can imagine how far they can go in the waterway before
Yes.
they settle or not. And so they're very, very, very readily distributed through the waterway. And of course, once they settle into the riverbank, the rhizome makes itself at home and builds and builds and builds and builds. Bits of rhizome break off, float down the water.
And on we go.
That's right, or the seeds.
So the rhizomes managed to secure a place in mud underwater?
Yes,
is
because
that?
they're a water plant,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
So then once they're in our waterways, they are a real challenge to get out because they're very hard to dig out, but also were one to dig them out, you would be eroding the riverbank.
And breaking the rhizomes.
That's right. And
to start
if a little bit of rhizome
colonies
goes off while you're doing that, you're
what a
in
nightmare.
deep shit.
So how?
So the only way they can be managed in the waterways is to poison them. So poisoning a plant in a waterway is a
not
big
a good
problem.
idea.
That's right. As I understand it, there's only a couple of specific poisons that will kill off the yellow flag iris, and one has to use them very carefully. One has to get special permits to use the poison and so on. So these things are a nightmare.
Yes, well, I can see that. And if you tried to do it yourself, you could kill off a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
would be disastrous.
Yeah. So it's my little plea to everybody to say, please don't buy these from nurseries.
I was moving the wood pile and I saw a moth and I recognised it as a bogong moth.
Fantastic. Except, was it alive or dead?
It was alive.
Oh, good.
But to be excited about a single bogong moth should not be the case.
You don't want to see a single bogong moth.
No, because 15 years ago I was sweeping them off with a dustpan and brush. The population of bogong moths has utterly crashed. And no one really knows why. It's probably to do with the life cycle. They are extraordinary migrants. They actually fly thousands of kilometres every year one way and thousands of kilometres back again. The female lays about 2,000 eggs, so good egg laying capacity there. And she lays them in various soils, mostly on the eastern slopes and plains of southern Australia. So a lot in Queensland, a lot in New South Wales, some in Victoria. And they stay there in the soil and they feed over winter. But each spring they emerge from those soils and they, now having undergone the usual larvae, molting, bigger, molting, growing, so on and so forth, they come out as an adult moth and they fly to the snow country. So those guys from Queensland, they're flying way, way down south to the Brindabella Ranges, to the snow country everywhere. And they go up into the highest areas and they settle in sheltered, moist spots between boulders, often above the tree line. And they shelter all together in vast numbers. And they all land on top of each other. They're like tiles on a roof. And that's partly to conserve moisture. And that's where they spend their summer, sheltering there. So they stay there in the cool all summer. And they will then fly back to their breeding grounds. They both go, the male and the female, and then she lays her eggs in the ground. There used to be billions of them. I remember being so shocked that they would come in such numbers because they're attracted, of course, like most moths, to light. So they'd be around street lights, they'd be in houses where the lights were on in the evening, and they would congregate in these massive numbers. And then in the 80s, they noticed a decline. And then in 2017, 2018, the population's utterly collapsed, disappeared, gone. 98% in a couple of years.
Wow.
And now I celebrate when I see one moth. It's important because a lot of creatures depend on this migration of moths. They're actually very fatty. All sorts of animals feed on them. But the most important is the very endangered little mountain pygmy possum. And that little animal that we thought was extinct but has been refound, burrows between the boulders and everything like that, absolutely depends on that moth. So lose one, you lose the other. This is like a real ecological collapse.
Yeah.
Nobody really knows what happened. There's an ecologist called Ken Green. He works in snow country outside Canberra. And he did find that the grass was growing brown around the bogong moth areas where they were collecting in the caves and crevices of the boulders. And he tested and found high levels of arsenic.
Oh.
And then he tested the bogongs, and they had high levels of arsenic. Now, where that arsenic came from, nobody knows. It could be a natural pollutant that has just emerged. So that could be a reason. It could be the drought, because 2017-18 we were in drought.
Yes.
They do need moisture.
Yeah.
And that's why they migrate mostly in those dry plains. They need to come south.
Away from the dry.
Nearer moist things. So it could be the drought. But if you see one, there is actually a website you can go to. What's it called? It's called, if you spot
Moth
one
tracker.
and you're not sure what it looks like, because it's not a very interesting looking moth,
And
is it?
We should just say as well, it's not a very big moth.
It's not very
Apparently,
big.
lots of people think bogong moths are big, but it's just an ordinary looking brown moth. Just Google it, everybody, and you'll see there are a couple of little markers that help you to recognise it. But I don't think Moth Tracker even cares if you've got the wrong moth. They're happy for you to just report, and if you've got a photograph, they'll sort it.
Yes, they'll sort it. Take a photograph. And then Moth Tracker is the go.
Yeah, so just check it out, everybody, Moth Tracker. They would really, really appreciate reports of bogong moths. Also, if you can do it, please turn off any lights outside.
Yes.
All moths are influenced by light pollution, and that's not a good thing. And don't use pesticides if you can possibly help it. Any of those things will help bogong moths and therefore help the mountain pygmy possums.
Absolutely.
So let's go to things happening in nature in the Highlands in November. The first one is the Crookwell Garden Festival will be happening on the 2nd and 3rd of November. Get on down there and support them. Then on the 7th of November, at Moss Vale, there will be a compost and worm farming workshop at the Resource Recovery Centre. I'll have a look at the Shire Council website for details on that. From the 8th to the 17th, it's Frog ID Week. And on the 13th at 6 p.m, the Earthflix movie for this month is called Climate Changers. Check that out. And then there's all the normal things that we have, the Wildlife Reserve working groups and the various bush care groups. We'll put the calendar up on the Going Wild in the Highlands Facebook page. Have a look at that and get out and do some stuff while the weather is as gorgeous as it is. One thing that we haven't mentioned, Lou and I, as you know, are into the whole greater glider thing. We think they're the cutest, gorgeous, most little-known animals in the country.
Yeah,
they're endangered.
And they're big. God,
Yeah,
they're so
yeah,
big.
they're gorgeous. And we're really pleased to observe that our hero in this area, Anna Grassanen, has now got a live feed she has a camera inside a greater glider hollow. And it's so cute.
It is so
check
cute. You can
out.
watch it for hours.
Yeah, you
There's
could.
a male and a female.
And a baby.
And a baby
Yes.
in this
so
hollow.
have a look at that, everybody. If you go to YouTube and you just put Greater Glider live stream or Greater Glider Talangata, Greater Glider Anna Grassanen, I'm sure that you will find it. The gliders will be in there sleeping during the day and you'll see them exiting the hollow just on sunset. Keep in mind that because it's in a forest and it's fairly remote, the feed isn't always brilliant. Okay, end of the show. Special thank you to Nathan Emery from Cicada Rama, who was really helpful when I was trying to learn a few things about cicadas. You can find us on Highland FM at 8 p.m. on Monday nights or anytime on their website under podcasts. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube where we usually add photos to go along with our chat. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Our email address is flossandlou@gmail.com. Thank you to Highland FM for sponsoring us. Thank you, as always, to all of our fantastic contributing photographers. And special thanks to Louise Docker for all of her support and for producing the monthly calendar. Bye everyone, we'll see you in December.
Bye now.